Okay, so we are live. Welcome to this week's edition of Startup Weekly. This week, I am joined by Matthew Schmidt, who is the CEO and founder of PeopleLogic.ai. And PeopleLogic helps to connect insights about your team, processes, and customers to help predict and prevent attrition, bottlenecks, and churn. So, Matthew, thank you very much for joining us, and a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome, great stuff. So maybe you could give us a little bit of a background about yourself, first of all, and maybe a little bit about your journey into PeopleLogic and maybe what were the steps that brought PeopleLogic into being.
Yeah, great question. So, I have always had a bit of an entrepreneurial slant, starting my first business probably back when I was 12 or 13. Self-taught as a programmer, and, built my last company when I was in college with my partner. And, we grew that from two guys on a couch with, as I like to say, rubbing two wooden nickels together. To about 50 people and about 10 million in revenue. And in that time, we saw a lot of success. We had a lot of struggles along the way, and in the end, we eventually made it to a successful private equity exit. And I stayed on for a while after that to kind of see how the next phase of companies grow and how you take it to that next level. And what I found is that even though, a lot of times we put in more experienced people, more platforms, more tools, spent more money, we still had a lot of the same mistakes. And because we were trying to move faster, those mistakes were even more costly. And we still were spending time, in meetings that could have been solved if we'd only had a bit more heads up on the problems. And so, as I started to have a bit more free time on my hands, I started to think about how we could solve that problem. And as I transitioned out, I started to build that. And so, the impetus for PeopleLogic is to be able to help companies that are growing through this, adolescent phase, the 30 to 300 employees, high growth, and help them be able to get out ahead of the problems that can cause their growth to slow down. Right? Because the faster you're trying to scale, the more risk there is that a misstep will, keep you from achieving your goals. And, it's less about a full-on failure of the company, because most companies don't full-on fail, right? But, failure takes a lot of different shapes. And, we help companies of those sizes to, mitigate that risk of failure and to allow them to keep growing as they scale.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So you've obviously had a great entrepreneurial journey thus far, and PeopleLogic is not your first rodeo per se. Can you give us maybe an insight into the product itself then? Because having spoken to you before, I know a little bit about how you maybe utilize data and present that in a way to help people reduce churn and give them insight. So can you just speak to the product itself maybe?
Sure. Yeah. So, the product kind of takes it has a couple of key components. One is this aggregation pipeline of where we can connect to the tools that your teams actually use and take the disparate, unstructured data and make sense of it. Right. And so we take the data, we run it through these pipelines, we augment it with additional data sources, and then we store it for analysis. Right. And once we've aggregated that data, then we have two other parts of the product that kick in: our recommendation engine, which is focused at looking at trends and statistics and modeling through behavioral science to surface recommendations around optimizing your operational efficiency, or helping to improve productivity of particular team members, or improving work-life balance, and making sure that people that are transitioning to remote work these days are still making sure they take the time to turn things off, right? And then the third part that really comes into play here is our insights engine. And here we've actually done some interesting technology creation to enhance the core Amazon Lex service, which is really the underlying natural language processing engine that serves even Alexa, right? And we've done some interesting work there to increase the complexity that it's able to understand. So understanding different things around, being able to explain in natural language, that I want to see insights about a particular activity for a certain team versus another team's activity over a certain time period against the previous time period, right? And we're able to interpret those really complicated natural language interactions and convert those into something that our data lake understands, right? And so for the most part, we're leveraging these services and eventually hope to be able to open source some of this technology to make it easier for people to be able to bring, interaction to systems in a more human way. Because at the end of the day, everything's about the people anyway. And so, we felt that we needed to make the ability to talk to our systems be human as well.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely sounds like you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the backside with regards to parsing the data and understanding it to actually give those insights to companies and obviously let them make decisions on kind of the emotional aspects maybe of some of the experiences that their employees are having. So yeah, it sounds like that's the product in and of itself, I guess, taking the complexity out of it for those people and presenting them with better decision making data sets, I guess.
Yeah, we're really looking to augment those gut feelings, right, and let you get out ahead of when you start to feel that gut feeling. If you look at the types of tools that try to give you insights about your business and intelligence about your business, they're very focused on companies bigger than the type of company that we serve, right? And so you have this really very underserved market in this 30 to 300 or 1,000 employees that is generating huge amounts of data and needs the insights and can leverage these insights and this data-driven decision making to improve their business. But there's nothing in the market that helps serve that, right? And then if they were to purchase one of those tools, what they would then have to do is then pay for the training to be able to get their teams to create dashboards and reports and those sorts of things. They'd have a heavy lift connecting all the different tools. And it winds up just being a very expensive undertaking, right? And often they're having to, they're hiring a data analyst to be able to understand what's going on. And so by the time you do that, you could be a year into it before you've actually gotten any insights. And you're still only looking back instead of looking forward into where your business is going to go. And so, what we help you do is get insights into your business in minutes and not months. And we do it without needing to bring on data analysts or data scientists to analyze it. We make it accessible in a very prescriptive way for people to be able to take action on the data that's been collected and on the insights that we're showing, so that you can spend your time looking forward into where your business is going to go and make sure that it continues to scale at the pace that you want to go.
Cool. So can you go maybe a little bit deeper on the reason for choosing maybe companies of the size that you're choosing and from that 30 to 300 range? It seems like it makes sense because of the nature of the scaling component with businesses of that size. But why kind of target those size businesses, and what's the real opportunity you see there?
Sure, great question. So at the heart of it, it's about giving back and helping the companies that are like the type of company that we were at our last company, right? And so the problem that I identified, the problem that we're solving, was identified very much in those size companies. And as I explored whether this was a problem beyond our company, what I found is that it's happening over and over and over again at companies of this type, right? And they have to maximize every dollar in most cases. And so that needs to be going to engineers and sales and, other parts of the organization, customer support, and not to a back office data analyst, or
Hmm.
not to having, somebody that's raised their hand, and said, "Oh, well, I'll take this," and now they're stuck building a spreadsheet of all your different KPIs every week,
Hmm.
in perpetuity, right? And so that that's the type of thing we take off your plate,
Hmm.
and that set of problems is really prevalent in the size of companies that we target. And once you're up above over that 1,000-person company, the specialization is so great. The ability to reach into tools like a traditional BI platform become much more available to you. And so, certainly the product can serve a need in those areas in that size company and moving up market, but the real benefit, the real, you know where there is still a large risk of failure,
Hmm.
exists in that 30 to 300.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. And it's quite cool that you've seen that insight coming from, I guess, a larger organization or an organization of a similar size, and having seen that play out and then turn around to actually help address that issue for others. Um, so that's awesome. Can you maybe speak to some of the more larger or macro trends within the industry for SaaS products related to data insights, and um, maybe how People Logic is different than maybe other traditional tools or other macro products um, when it comes to giving insights,
Yeah, so I think in the data space, there's been a couple of larger trends. So the one of the trends is this ability to be able to connect different data sources and stitch them together.
Mm-hmm.
So you have tools like Segment, and you have tools like Snowflake, and those are great products. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously Snowflake has raised a ton of money, right? And I think Segment has as well.
Mm-hmm.
The other place that I think you see a lot of investment, and it's really at this intersection of data and AI, is the ability to one of the key problems with machine learning and AI is this training problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it needs very structured data. And so a lot of what you're seeing in the market is how do you make it simpler to train your modeling, to train your AI
Mm-hmm.
with this messy data that exists in different sources. Now, there's still a lot of heavy lift when you're using most of those tools, and
Mm-hmm.
part of the way we've been able to get around the need for that is that we're dealing with a relatively limited set of data inputs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can identify that an opportunity is an opportunity regardless of whether it comes from Salesforce or HubSpot
For
or
sure.
Close CRM, right? Or a card being moved to the same in Trello as it is in Asana and Digite. And so that allows us to get around that particular problem. The other thing that most of these different tools are doing, in the broad BI sense, even if they're moving to a place where they're able to give you some predictions, they're not able to give you predictive or prescriptive guidance
Mm-hmm.
on how to leverage it. And so you still are left with this problem uh, of everyone who looks at the data is drawing a different conclusion from the data.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And because we're trying to simplify that and give you that prescriptive guidance, you don't have that same problem with People Logic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're able to say, all right, we know that the call volume has gone down by 20%.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's gone down by 20%, here's what we're seeing. They've scheduled fewer meetings, they've sent fewer emails, and so now they're sending, their call volume has decreased, right? Is that because they were given fewer leads, right? And some of that is dependent on whether your organization's process. But
Mm-hmm.
then we're able to tell you, well, when we see this thing, here is how you should address it with your team member so that you can improve their performance back to the level that you would like. Right. And we're doing that because we're leveraging the behavioral science component and we brought on a PhD to help us analyze the data and to give this a focus on, okay, how do we say the right things that make the manager want to be able to act on this recommendation in the way that we've recommended so that they can put the performance back where it needs to go.
That's interesting. I think there's from what you're saying, it sounds like there's a number of layers to what you're doing, especially with the data, but also maybe from a psychological perspective, like you said, by bringing in someone like that to aid with helping others understand how to make decisions based on that, and then how that affects the people. So that definitely seems like it's something different and something new maybe within that space.
And I think that's a component that's been, at first glance, it's, you don't often recognize that that's where that there's the depth there, that there are those layers. And I think, we are one of the only products, first, that's focused on this size of company, but then second, that is combining this ability to see the insights about your team, using the data that your teams are actually using, and then giving you the prescriptive recommendations that will point you towards improved performance, right? And I don't know that anybody else is really driving that way in the same way that we are using science.
Yeah, very interesting. So we've touched on it briefly already, and you mentioned remote work and a lot of teams having to go remote now, especially in light of all that's been going on the past few months. But I think another challenge that comes with a lot of teams going remote is the challenge of workflow optimization. And I think it seems to be something that a lot of companies are battling with individuals and teams. So is people logic maybe something that can help teams with regard to workflow optimization, or does the decision making that it helps to aid maybe play into how that can be improved with a lot of people going remote?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I mean there are plenty of tools that are trying to help with workflow automation, right? Where we play is less around we're going to help you automate your workflows or create workflows, and more around, because we have this really unique view across the tools that your teams are actually using. We're actually able to surface the workflows that you may not have noticed were actually happening, or give you further insight into the ways that your teams are actually working when maybe you thought they worked another way, or help you understand where there are bottlenecks in communication between your sales team and your engineering team, or customer success in a particular customer, right? Because what most organizations, they may know, one of the biggest things that we always heard, our customer success team is always so busy. They're worn out. They have so much going on. They just can't keep up. What we can tell you is, why, right? Why are they feeling that way? Is it because they have, 10,000 tickets that they're having to address? Is it that, they have, they're getting no help from engineering when they send things over to engineering, right? Is it that sales continues to sell things when there is no throughput to be able to service it, right? And too many of those things, as an organization scales, too many of those types, the simple complaint of, I'm underwater, right? I just can't do anymore, get overlooked, right? And they get ignored until someone burns out and they quit, right? And so if we can give you the insights into, why, without having to spend a ton of time, we can help you make adjustments to your organization to avoid that type of burnout, to improve the workflows, to make sure that you unstick a process. and make things flow better, right? Because if the business has fewer bottlenecks, it can scale faster.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting that you mentioned you obviously get insights into all the different tools that a business is leveraging to present those insights and data to them. But kind of, I guess, on the other side of that, with the businesses who are using PeopleLogic, are you seeing any ways in which they're using your tool that maybe you didn't anticipate before, or are they leveraging the tool in ways you didn't expect?
It's a a really interesting thing. I mean, we're still only about 6 months into being in the market. I mean, I think we have seen everything from, they have managers that are they're using the recommendations to get a useful nudge about the managerial things that they should be doing to improve their team's work-life balance or employee experience, right? We have CEOs that are using the platform to cut what could be some days is half of their time spent digging into chasing down a metric that's off, because we're able to surface where those problems are in the workflows that are causing it, and helping them identify things like, is my sales team following a single process, or are they following their own process individually? And we've been able to help them identify that, particularly as they've moved remote. And then we have some that are using our stay factor to be able to quantify their gut feeling about a particular employee during a probationary period. And those are, that one is probably one that we didn't really expect that would happen, but has been able to be additive to the customer as they're using our platform.
Awesome, yeah. And I'm sure that all kind of serves as a great element of feedback for you to begin prioritizing what features you include or build out in the future as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Cool. So maybe we might touch on a couple of questions based on your own kind of experience on entrepreneurship in general. And yeah, maybe can you just speak to maybe what you like so much about entrepreneurship, because it's never an easy road to go down, I think. From a building a business perspective, and you've obviously done it a few times now. Yeah, what do you love so much about it, and kind of what gets you going?
That's a great question. There's no doubt that the stress and the pressure of it can certainly get to you, right? And that's that's where I think it's so important to have a team that you trust, particularly when you're in the early days, whether those are co-founders or whether those are early team members that are really fully bought in, right? You have to be able to have that transparency and trust. For me, I think it's the freedom to set my own future, and to be in control of that. And I guess that could sound a little bit selfish at some level, but I think the being able to have your own future in your own hands and be able to to be able to work on many different things in any given day, and to be able to create, right?
Yeah.
And so being able to create something from scratch is so important and fulfilling. And to choose who you get to work with, and what you do, and the set your own path. Those are things you can't. It's very hard to find anywhere else other than if you're building your own business.
Yeah, for sure. They're all excellent reasons in and of themselves. I think most people who go down a similar path are I think a lot of entrepreneurs are very much driven by the freedom component, and really just wanting to have that creative control over the process from start to finish. So that's amazing. Yeah. Can you shed maybe some of your biggest lessons learned over the past few years? I don't know if there's any that might stand out in particular, but maybe some things you could help others with that you learned the hard way, that maybe so some people don't have to go through quite as much hardship with.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the one that, particularly that I'm still learning, you need to, you can't get too hung up on the highs and can't get too hung up on the lows,
Hmm.
right? And, you know, this is something that, you know, much worse in my younger years, but even, this week alone, right? I start the week at one point, the next day I'm like way on the other side of the spectrum, and then, the next day is way down. Like, and
Hmm.
so within any given week, you have these highs and these lows, and you have to be able to smooth them out.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it becomes, this stress on you and your body, and those things, it makes it impossible to continue, right?
Hmm.
At least for very long. Um, because I think the other thing to keep in mind is that running a startup and building your own company is a marathon, not a sprint.
Hmm.
And so, you have to be ready to, take this for the long run, and you have to be committed to it for the long run, more than anyone else, right? Um, and that the people that you have around you, particularly in the early days, also have to be in it for the long run, right?
Hmm.
To take it right to the very end, where you either will make it successful or you have no money left,
Hmm.
right?
For sure.
And those, and that's a scary proposition. Um, I think the other thing that I have learned, and this is a more recent learning, is, in the early days, transparency is so important with your team, right?
Hmm.
And so that's where, with our team, we share probably more transparent than most, but, everything from, the state of the bank account, right on down, right? And
Hmm.
it's so important to, through transparency, you can breed trust.
Hmm.
And the trust part is just super important,
Hmm.
because there has to be absolute trust between you and your team, and you have to trust that everybody's going to do the things, one, that they say they're going to do, but two, that they need to do,
Hmm.
because there's 1,000 different things on any given day that you can do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's up to you to, to build out those things and to do those things. And so, those are some of them. It's I would say I'm still learning. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that's the other part of it. As an entrepreneur, my last company, one of our core values was being a lifelong learner.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's so important that you set aside time on a regular basis to continue to learn. And, maybe you aren't a finance whiz and you need to learn about, basic business accounting, right? So that you can balance your books. Or
Hmm.
you may not be technical, but um, you want to at least be able to understand what your technical co-founder is telling you, right? Or maybe you're the head engineer or a CTO, and this week you need to learn about Salesforce.
Hmm.
And so those, I think it's so important that you continue to broaden your horizons, because you have to be balanced, and well balanced in your skill sets to be able to, as a team,
Hmm.
right, to be able to function as a startup.
For sure. Yeah, some great insights there. I think a lot of entrepreneurs and yeah, people in general, I think, struggling with the highs and lows of maybe getting customers and then struggling to pay bills maybe the next week. And there's definitely yeah, it's definitely a journey of ups and downs. But yeah, some great insights there. So thank you very much. Um, Finally, maybe just to wrap things up, what's the next plan for People Logic, and then what's next on the cards?
Yeah, so we're really very excited about what we have coming up. Our big push now is to, one, to bring in, we've got this behavioral scientist coming on board, and that's, we're really excited to add that layer into the entire product,
Mm-hmm.
from start to finish. We've got some really cool technology that's going to allow us to deploy individualized machine learning models uh, for our customers without
Mm-hmm.
needing to do specialized professional services and without a lot of hand-holding.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be able to do that at scale and at a low cost. And so that's going to be a huge game changer. And then, really it's continuing to add customers and be able to understand what their problems are and how we can help them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really one of the things, back to the previous question about, advice for entrepreneurs. We too often get zoned into building a product or selling the product.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to step back for a moment and listen to the people who are going to be your customers or are your customers, and make sure that you, listen to what they're telling you, because they're going to tell you exactly what you need to do and how to make money. And what you'll find is that most people who are attracted to buying from small companies are very, very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to help, they want to see you succeed, and they want to be able to give their advice because they've been there.
Amazing. Yeah. Great to hear about all of the stuff on the roadmap for PeopleLogic, and some great words of advice from someone who's been through it all a couple of times before. So Matthew, thank you very much for joining us on the chat this week. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we finish up?
No, that's I really enjoyed being here, and look forward to everything that you guys are doing. Really excited about the start of Sanctuary, and excited to be part of that.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Once again, thank you very much for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, my man.
Absolutely. You too.
Cheers.